Hey everybody, and welcome back to the shop. Well, today we have a video that might save you a lot of money and aggravation. You see right here we have a Volvo, and this Volvo has the most anti-tamper wheel locks I have ever seen. And the problem is the customer has at some point in time lost the wheel key. Either the last shop that worked on the car never gave it back to him, or it was misplaced. Either way, the key is gone. And these things are next to impossible to remove without the key. Most wheel locks are extremely easy to remove when the key is missing. I have a bunch of different methods for doing that. I'll make some videos of this traditional style wheel locks and how to remove them. It's real quick and easy, and they're not very anti-tamper, anti-theft at all. But the ones in these Volvos are really, really intense. So let me show you how I get them off without the proper key. Now on these Volvos, the wheel lock looks like a traditional lug nut, except this hex free spins. This is just turning, and it does not turn the lock. It's like a dummy lug nut. If you look inside, you can see that wild shape recessed in to a hardened washer around the outside. And it's rather deep inside the wheel. Traditionally, wheel locks, the whole surface is flat. You can get around the outside of the lock itself. It's just a very hard material that most tools don't grip. And there's a unique pattern on the inside that allows the key to click in and take it off. Since this hex spins free and is obstructing you from getting into the actual lock key shape itself, it's almost impossible to get in there with any tools to get that to move. Let me show you some of the first attempts I had on getting that removed. Now, very common when you have a broken piece of hardware, something you can't grip, you can use a center punch or a pointed chisel to dig a groove into that component and then get it to spin loose. So I thought, well, let me get the air hammer out. Took an air hammer bit and sharpened it to a point, and I put this special profile on here to allow me to have a little extra clearance into the wheel. What I was trying to do is get this tip to grab part of that key and then actually knock it loose and get it to start spinning that lock out. The problem is wheel locks are an extremely hard material, so you can't really dig into them. That way they can't be drilled and things like that. So what I did find is there's only one location you can even get a tool like this into that lock without gouging the wheel. And I'm really trying to not leave any marks on the wheel if I can help it. So what I found was even with this, I was not able to get a good enough grip to knock that thing loose and start spinning it off. So my next thought was, well, if that dummy lug nut in the center that just free spins, if that was out of the way, it gave me a lot more room to get a chisel like this or a bigger chisel onto that lock and get it to spin free. So I tried to destroy that center hex. I thought I could just split it in half and remove it. So I took a regular pointed chisel and tried to crack and split that off. And that material is so hard, it literally didn't even leave a scratch. So the next thing I thought was, I contacted a good friend of mine who worked for Volvo for like 25 years. Thought if anybody has a set of locks for Volvos, it's going to be this guy. Called him up, he said, no man, you're screwed. Even at the dealership, nobody has like a universal set of locks. They're all different. You'll never figure out which one you need. You have to destroy it to get it off. I was like, well, how do you do it? And he basically told me he'd take a 1-inch hole saw and core through that lock, core through the entire wheel, destroying the wheel. Once the wheel is out of the way, you can then grab what's left and spin it out of the knuckle. Thought, there is no way I'm destroying 4 wheels. These things have to be about $1,000 a piece. There's got to be a better option. The good thing is, not only am I a auto repair shop, but I'm also a coach building, fabrication, and machine shop. So there's pretty much nothing we can't fabricate in-house, and we have a lot of equipment that traditional automotive shops do not have. So I thought there's got to be an easier way, and this is what we came up with. Now, most automotive repair shops, dealerships and such do not have a TIG welder. Now, you could probably get away with a MIG welder, but the TIG welder is definitely going to be the way to go. If you're going to use a MIG welder, it's going to take a little extra work, and you're going to need to make a heat shield. I'll explain all that in a moment. But what I'm thinking is that free spinning nut on the outside, we are going to TIG weld that solid to the locking ring of the lock. That will make them one solid unit. In theory, we can then put a socket on that hex and spin the nut right out of the wheel. So let's give it a shot, and I hope this works. So problem number one is we can't clip the ground for the welder to the lug nut itself. There's no way to do that. It would also be in the way, even if we could clip it on there. And I do not want to clip the ground to the chassis of the vehicle or the suspension and have that current actually flow through the knuckle and through the threads of the nut. You never want to ground your welder through a thread. You will forever weld that thread together and it will not come apart. So we need to figure out a way to get this ground hooked to that lug nut without putting current through the threads itself. So what I'm going to do is I took a piece of steel rod, clipped it into the welder ground. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this on the end of the lug nut, that hex right in the center. I'm going to weld it straight to the lug nut itself. That way this can stay attached to the lug nut and give us a ground on the outside. Now, it's going to be a little tricky to hold this to the nut and then TIG weld it on. This would probably be better for the MIG welding process, but I'll see if I can just fusion tack this together. I also want to make sure I don't make it too strong of a tack because I'm going to have to break this off when I'm done to put a socket on this lug nut. So let's give it a shot. All right, we've got the steel rod and the ground clamp. Got our TIG welder. I am going to try to put this off to the side in a manner that it's going to be out of my way when I go to weld down in there. Now let's try to fusion tack this together. All right, so that is now welded on. And we have a ground directly on the hex of that nut. So now we have to try to weld the hex of the nut to the lock that's down in that hole. All right, so I'm going to put a lot of tungsten stick out here on my TIG welder. I've got the gas turned up a little extra as well. Get good coverage down in there. Let's try to get down in there and weld these together. Some fans on in the shop that I should probably turn off. You can already tell it's blowing my gas away. I can feel the fan blowing on my back. All right. I think we pulled that off without hurting the wheel. Let me show you what we got. That black mark on the wheel is not a burn mark. That's just the welding gases coming off. That'll wipe right off. Not going to do it at this moment because it's hot. But let's break this off now and get a socket on there and see if that spins out of there. So I would suggest using an actual socket and ratchet, not an impact gun, because an impact gun might break that weld. Socket on here, and look at that. There you have it, folks. Lock is removed. Wheel unharmed. See that black mark wiped right off. It was not a burn. It was just basically smoke laying on it. Wheel's in perfect condition. Let me cool that off and I'll show you what it looks like. So there's the lock right there. You can see that this washer here that has the design in it is what the key would lock into. That is solid to the threads. This tapered cone floats. That's what centers it on the wheel. And this hex is normally just a dummy hex that is pressed in there, but it free spins. It's not actually attached to anything, but it's also extremely difficult to get off and get it out of the way. So we TIG welded the nut to the washer, and we're able to spin this right out of there without hurting the wheel. So what the dealership was doing was taking a 1-inch hole saw, which is the same size as that lock ring, coring through that, and then actually coring through the wheel, coring around that cone. It cores around that cone. What would that would allow you to actually pull the entire wheel off the car, leaving just this thread and cone still in the actual spindle of the vehicle. Everything would be out of your way. You'd be able to grab what's left and just spin it off with a pair of vice grips or something like that. I think that's completely insane, and why would you ruin an expensive wheel to get it off? There's always got to be a better way, always. And there you have it. Could you do this with a MIG welder? Yes. The problem is the MIG welder has very little precision when you're down in that hole, and you could definitely risk damaging the actual surface of the aluminum wheel. So if that was the case, I'd take a small piece of aluminum and make a little tube or a little roll and stick it in here to protect the MIG welder from splatter and heat from melting this aluminum, causing any damage to, this is like basically it's like powder coated. You don't want to damage that. Powder coating can take a lot of heat, a lot of temperature, but you definitely don't want to get the welder physically touching it. You could definitely damage it. So there you have it. TIG weld's the way to go. MIG weld would probably work, just be careful. Well, I really hope this quick video helps save you some time and probably a lot of money if you're thinking about damaging a set of wheels to get them off just because you lost the wheel kit. Don't hurt your wheels. Don't go spend a bunch of money at another shop trying to get them removed, machined out, anything wild and crazy. All you need is a welder. Most shops have at least a MIG welder, but if you don't have a MIG welder, find a local shop, maybe a welding shop that has a TIG welder. They might not work on cars, but give them a call and say, hey, look, watch this guy's YouTube video, see how he does it. How much would you charge us to get these 4 locks off before you go drilling out 4 $1,000 or more wheels, costing the customer or yourself a lot of money and a lot of aggravation. So if you don't have a TIG welder or a welder, find someone that does. Make sure they're competent at using it. Show them this very video so they have an idea of what the heck you're talking about, and it will definitely help you out. So I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Make sure you subscribe. Lots of great videos on the way. I've got over 200 videos filmed. Need to find the time to edit them. And make sure you check out my other channel if you're into custom hot rods, fabrication, machining, race cars, restoration, anything like that. See all these cars in the background that we're restoring? Make sure you check out Phillips Hot Rods and Customs. That's my other YouTube channel. There is a link below where you can find that content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.